Pop Culture Yearbook. On this show, we pick pieces of pop culture that were important to us in a given year. We then discuss memories and dig into those movies, albums, shows, and more. I am Brad.
I am Pete.
And I'm Giff.
And we are in 1995 right now. This is episode 2 of 1995. Tonight is Pete's Choice. We're going to be talking about Tommy Boy. And Pete, you're going to tell us about 95 for you, so I'm going to kick it over right now.
I will talk about 1995, which was probably the best year of my life.
Oh my God.
In many ways.
Wow.
It was one of them for a number of reasons, but I'll just kind of dive in.
It was a good year.
It was a great year. 1995 was also, it was kind of a two-part year, like many of these college years really are. You know, we talked about 1994 being two separate kind of conversations. 95 is kind of the same because it would have started when I was in the dorms freshman year in college. And it was great because that's when I had my established set of friends in college. We were going out doing parties all the time, just had a great time. That first part before the new year probably was when you're just kind of getting to know it, everybody get comfortable, that kind of thing. But now we're having all kinds of fun. And when the weather gets nice, then it's even more fun when springtime comes around. You know, girls are wearing their shorts, all that kind of stuff. Fun to watch.
They are.
And then
something interesting to have as a memory: girls wearing shorts.
Yes. Well, it is what it is. It was really my last year as a single man, which we'll get into in a little bit. But I think this was the last summer. No, it wasn't. Never mind. I'm going to back off on that comment. I did go home over the summer, back to my parents' house. It wasn't the last summer. I thought I was going to say it was, but I went home the following summer. But I digress. It's just a great summer. Spending, coming back after the year in college and just kind of hanging out with you guys again was awesome. And then fall came around. And it's back to college now. In October was the month that I met my wife, Jenny, and so it's just kind of funny. It was one of those butterfly moments. Whereas if you think that this had never happened, if this didn't happen, then where would I be and where would Brad be? Because the reason that Brad and Kim are together. Now, how that happened was that. I was just hanging out with a friend, a couple of, Brad, I know you remember my friend Cal. Gifford, have you ever met Cal? Good guy,
I don't know
tall
if I've
guy.
met him, but I've heard the name many a time.
Yes, he was in the wedding.
That
he was in my
party
wedding.
that we had at
then I
our
would have
apartment
met him at your wedding.
where I met Kim. Wasn't Gifford and Cal both there that night?
They probably were there that night.
You were there. Weren't you there, Gifford?
Oh, yeah, I was there.
Yeah, so there you go.
He didn't leave a very strong impression. We should have him on sometime. And
everybody was there that night.
We should. I haven't talked to him in many years, actually. But in any event,
good old Cal.
He lived in the same apartment complex as I did, and so we would hang out all the time. Not in the same apartment, but the same complex, right across the parking lot. So I was over there. We weren't really planning on doing much. I think it was on a Thursday night. Yeah, it was a Thursday, and Thursday was a big party night in Mankato, but we weren't really planning on doing a whole lot, but he was playing his music loud, and so then people just started coming over, and it turned into a party. Yeah.
Loud music.
Well, yeah, he liked to listen to Steely Dan all the time.
And that's exactly what I figured. When I hear loud music, I think of Steely Dan right away.
There you go. But in any event, it just kind of turned into a party, and then Jenny and her group of friends from the dorm, and it was about their first month in college, or a month and a half into their college career, and they were just walking around looking for a place to go, and they heard music, and they just walked right in, and they
just didn't know any better.
They didn't know any better.
An apartment, you said, right?
That's correct.
Or is it a dorm?
No, we were in an apartment, but they were living in the girls were living in a dorm, but they were walking around the apartment.
A random apartment building and walked around.
That's what you did in Mankato.
Everybody's friends in Mankato.
You
apartment
would
building that seems a little different. Anyway,
Well, yeah, you walk around just like look, they heard loud music and
I'm glad
and
she
they
walked through there because, as you said, it's all part of the puzzle.
exactly. Exactly. So then I don't know, it's just this group of girls, and I started talking to them, and Jenny wasn't the most outgoing in the group, and I had started talking to one of the other ones, and then I don't know, Jenny was just hanging out. We just started dancing together, and one thing led to another, and yada yada yada. Here we are. We got 2 kids.
Dancing. Wow.
But you yada over the best part.
Well, the thing is that when things started getting good there, we were like slow dancing to Tootsie Roll. That's what Jenny will tell you is like the first, because Tootsie Roll came on. It wasn't Steely Dan anymore. I don't know. It's just he had random music playing.
That's quite a collection there.
That is a
Yeah.
very
Well, I can't imagine he would have. I don't know exactly how that happened because he certainly wouldn't have put Tootsie Roll in. It wasn't really his type. But
Jenny's
maybe
a
his
year
roommate.
younger than you, so as you said,
That's correct.
she just started college, so
This was Pete's sophomore
she
year.
just thought you were so great. She didn't need to see what else was out there, huh? Were you ever afraid that
Well,
maybe she was going to have a
quick.
well, here's the thing: is
high
that
praise for you, I guess, Pete?
Yeah.
this was
Shocking.
on October 19th, and so then we like hung out together that weekend, and then her birthday is October 23rd, and we were gonna go. Well, we're
Oh,
going.
so she was just fishing for a birthday present. Maybe that's what it was.
Yeah.
That's basically it. But the deal was that we couldn't go out on her actual birthday because I had a night class that night, and we said, okay, let's go out the next night. I show up at her dorm, and I bought like a half a dozen roses for her because I'm gonna be like, this is it, you know. I walk in, and there's a dozen roses sitting on her desk from her former boyfriend. So I thought, well, that's it. This is it. It's over. I should have just
doesn't matter.
I should have just threw the roses on the ground and ran.
It's the motion of the ocean to slow dance during Tootsie Roll that matters.
That's right.
What
that's
color?
right.
I mean, did you find the right color of roses? Because that can be a big deal.
They were all red roses. I think his were red roses and mine were red roses.
But
I suppose you got her a heart box of chocolates too.
Well, I don't think no, I didn't do that. It was just a half dozen because I didn't want to go too over the top. I had just met her, and so I thought that would be appropriate. But he outdid me. But it didn't matter because she had no interest in him anymore anyway. So we went to Red Lobster in Mankato for our first date, which is a big deal. That when you're in college, when you're a sophomore in college and you got no money, that's a big investment, right?
Red roses and Red Lobster. This is
that's right.
Tale as old as time. so much romance.
There it is. Yep, I was a romantic. That's right. So I picked her up in my '84 Celebrity and took her to. It took her to Red Lobster, and she still makes fun of me for some reason because I ordered the cod, which I guess she thinks that's the funniest thing because I don't, you know, I guess I didn't know that if I go to Red Lobster, I'm supposed to get
funny. I guess
you go to Red Lobster, you get shrimp or lobster, I guess. So, but it's still like
seafood. I thought.
Well, yeah, it's which I thought cod was seafood, but it's a running joke. She still makes fun of me for it. So, anyway, the other thing that happened in that same month was I guess it was a very historic month in our family was that my parents had finalized the sale of Viking Snacks, which was the business that they had owned for about 12 years. And so they sold the company, moved it, the buyers then moved it to Sioux Falls, and it's still going strong. They've grown it into more of a vending operation. What it was an honor snack tray. Brad knows all this very well, and Gifford, you do too. But for the listeners, it was on the honor snack system where it was like a cardboard tray that you would leave instead of having a vending machine. It would just be on the honor system, and you'd leave it in all these small businesses that might be too small to have a vending machine. People would just be on their honor to put in whatever it was for the candy bar and take the candy bar. My dad made a decent living off it. So But then, yes, he had some buyers that just came out of nowhere. He had no intention of selling it, but they came out of nowhere, and he goes, "Well, all right, well, here's the price." And then there's very little negotiation on it.
It was pretty much on the honor system. It sounds like.
That's right. We'll just leave you this big check at
We'll
the
take
front of the
this
door
and give you this.
So, so there it was. So it was all within that same month. And other things in 1995, when the apartment that I did live in, it was an interesting group of guys. My best friend, my two best friends that year were Cal and a guy named Ali. Now, he was a guy that I became really good friends with in the dorms freshman year, and he was a foreign exchange student from Iran. That in high school, he came to Burnsville High School, and then he went to Burnsville. Yep, Burnsville Blaze. And then he just stayed in Minnesota and went to college in Mankato. And actually, he transferred out of Mankato after sophomore year, went to the University of Minnesota, and his major was pharmacy, and he had both Todd and Kristen as professors.
Wow.
So so it all comes full circle, Brad, who, by the way, Todd is Brad's brother, and Kristen is his wife. So they're both
the brother who
professors.
doesn't really care for Christmas vacation.
Yeah.
That's right. That's the one. So, and then obviously from a pop culture standpoint, I mean, this year was about as good as it gets, which we've talked about. We'll talk a little bit about the TV shows and some other things, but I do want to dive into the movie Tommy Boy, unless anybody has anything to add before we dive into that topic.
Why did you pick Tommy Boy, Pete?
I picked Tommy Boy because I remember it as being one of the funniest movies that was out there. When I talked about that when we get into our top 5 list at the end of the show, we're going to discuss our top 5 laugh out loud movies, which is different, as I described to my co-hosts. It's different than saying what are the best top 5 comedies of all time. Because you might put Tommy Boy as the movie that made you laugh the hardest, but it may not be what you consider the best overall movie or comedy of all time. So there's a difference. So, but we'll get into this. This movie, I remember watching it a few times during that era. And then kind of put it away, never really watched it again for a number of years until this week. And I got to be honest, this movie didn't hit me as hard this time around as it did the first time. I remember it being better than it was, and maybe it's the time of my life, or maybe it was the mood I was in just when I watched it this time. There was definitely a lot of funny parts, don't get me wrong. But it just it fell a little flat with me this time.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I watched it once, like just a couple months ago or something. For some reason I watched it. I don't remember, and I thought, this is pretty funny, but I hadn't watched it in years and years. But I mean, I have a list here at the end of this. I'm going to talk about like I don't put it in like any kind of classic category of comedy. I think it's in a tier below that, and some people love it and think it's that high, and they still do. But I'm with you. It's funny and it has good parts. And I wrote down things I liked and things that I didn't like about it. But I don't think it's one of those classics you'd watch over and over again.
Right.
See,
go.
And there's a lot of lines from it that I use on a regular basis.
That's true. There are some very repeatable lines.
Absolutely.
So it's a lot of
maybe you look
lines.
back and think, oh, that movie's hilarious because of all these lines. But, maybe it's just those lines that are funny in your everyday life.
Mm-hmm.
Or I don't know. What did you think of overall?
I still like the movie. If it's on television, I'll sit and watch it, for a while. But you never catch the beginning of it. It's one of those where you catch on maybe, halfway through the sales trip. When they're singing in the car or something and you watch it through. So I do really like the movie. I think they do such a great job. They play off each other so well. So I think I wouldn't say it doesn't hold up. I think it does, but Yeah, it's
I
not.
wouldn't either. I think it holds up fine.
Right.
It's not one I'm going to watch like
Right.
as often as like Vacation. It's
Right.
just, it's not like that.
No, I wouldn't put it in my top 15 or anything, but it's definitely a very good film.
One thing about this movie is that I'm always, when we do these movies, I'm kind of looking up. It's like, is this one that I can watch with my kids, or should I watch this on my own? And as I looked it up under like the parents' guide and everything, it didn't look that bad. And there are a few things that are, there's some masturbation jokes, but they would be over your head if they didn't know what they were talking about. Right? It's overall much more tame than you think it is.
But I don't know. I was thinking of that because I asked my kids to watch it once, and I don't know if they would like. We've watched a lot of older comedies, and they don't love them all. But I don't know that as I watched this one, I kind of like, oh, I'm glad they didn't watch it because I don't think they'd really like it. I don't think a kid today would really see much humor in it that doesn't know about Chris Farley and stuff like that.
Sure.
Well, Jolie came into it partway through the movie, and what she said was, "Dad, this movie is just like Planes, Trains, and Automobiles."
Oh, that's one of my things I wrote down. I have a series of like similarities to different movies, and
I didn't think about that until she said it, and I'm like, my
sure.
God, she's right. She's absolutely right. Because there was
you mean talking about the part with the car where it's all beat to hell,
yep.
right? I mean,
and
singing,
and they almost got ran over by a truck.
Yeah.
There was one scene on the interstate, which a good chunk of the movie takes place in Minnesota. I don't think it was filmed in Minnesota. I think a lot of it was filmed in Canada, as a matter of fact, which I did read in that David Spade biography, which I'll get into a little bit. But yeah, I just thought that was kind of an interesting call out by my 9-year-old.
Yeah, that's one of the movies that I know it's been compared to, and that it's pretty easy to see the similarity. The other one that I thought of right away when I started watching this is same year Billy Madison came out, and I think it's very similar to that as far as Chris Farley's like the screwed up son like Billy Madison, and then David Spade is like the Bradley Whitford, who's not like part of the family, but he's the guy that and there's a big similarity between just the whole setup between the dad, the son, and this other guy.
Well, and Spade's much
although
more
David
lovable
Spade is a much nicer overall in the end person. It works out much better. But at the beginning, very similar.
You're bringing up one of my fun facts here that I found, because the original title for this movie, Tommy Boy, was Billy the Third. But then when they were releasing the movies, when they were putting them together, they decided they better change it because you had this other movie going on at the same time that was in the making that was called Billy Madison, and they're both Saturday Night Live characters or actors. And that's why they had to change the name to Tommy Boy.
Sure.
Which I think that part of it worked out. I just think that the things that did fall flat with me is that some of the Chris Farley stuff, it just felt. I mean, his whole thing was he would overdo everything, and that was the bit. But there's a couple of times where I just said, that's just not quite as funny. I don't know.
Yeah. I got a short.
It's hard to really explain.
Like too, if you're going to go.
Sure, go ahead. Go for it.
So one of them is there's just too many fat jokes for one thing. They're nonstop. It's like, okay, we get it. He's a big guy, and watching it today, it's like, holy cow, that's a lot of fat jokes. They're not that funny.
There are some funny.
A couple of them are.
Well, I mean, there might be some funny ones, but there's so many of them. It's like, give it a break. It's lazy. It feels like lazy writing. Okay, oh, he's a fat guy. Haha. I just Bo Derek, whatever. I like the line where he says she's like a 10 because she's in the movie 10. But you guys probably found she was nominated for a Razzie.
Oh yeah, I can see that.
You guys usually know that stuff. And I thought it was good because she's not very good. She doesn't do a whole lot in this movie. I thought the scenes had. I think.
Sorry, I didn't write this down, but I came across a fun fact. I think it was she only had like 17 lines in the movie.
She doesn't say much. No.
Yeah, she doesn't say a whole lot.
And she kind of has a pretty important role in the end. It's like, it's just not much there.
I didn't understand how she just gets to leave at the end. Like she hooks up with Zelensky and
Rob
another one on the hook for anything.
Rob Lowe gets arrested.
This guy. Yeah, I thought that was strange.
The scenes where Tommy meets Rob Lowe, I thought that whole part was pretty bad too. The meeting him, and then when they go cow tipping, that just seems like a pointless scene, and it's kind of overdone. And then when they go to the gas station and he's like spraying him and he does the dance, it's like,
Maniac.
this is not part of a plot of any. This is just in there
No.
to make him dance because he's a big guy. And it's like, come on.
How many times I was on that scene? Have you ever seen a hose that's right hooked up to the gas tank? Like
To the gas. Yeah.
No, I didn't
Or to
understand.
the-
Wasn't he spraying with gas or what? I
No,
mean,
that was water.
No, it was
no, but,
water.
Like, it looks like, why is it water? What the heck is
It said, well, I was wondering that. I thought it was gas at first too, but then if you look at it, there's actually a sign that says air and water.
Yeah.
Well, in
and
Sandusky, the city ordinance says that you can have the water hooked up to the gas station pump there. So it's just a little different city ordinance there in Sandusky.
I got
You really did your research.
Thank you.
two more things that I didn't like much. The singing in the car can be funny, but they do it. There's a lot of. It feels like they're just adding time to the movie. Again, it's not like there's like three scenes
yeah.
where they're singing in the car, and it's like, what's the point of this? It feels
Once
like we're
would
just
be
trying
okay.
to make it longer. And then the last thing I thought the whole part where they get on the plane as flight attendants is. I mean, obviously the movie's not really realistic, but that scene is just.
It's way
Okay,
over
so
the top.
First of all, what happened to the other flight attendants that were on the plane? They just
Paid
disappeared.
him off.
And
No.
they beat them to take their clothes, but then there was other ones on the plane when they got on it. They're part
You
of
think
the
they
crew.
beat him up? I think they just paid him off.
I don't know. Anyway,
Well,
that was
and did the
way
clothes
too
fit?
much for me.
How did the
That was
clothes
just
fit
like,
Chris
this is not-
Farley?
This is over the line of funny to just dumb.
Right.
So that's all. The rest, I got a
Although
lot of
the-
stuff I like too.
Although the flight attendant scene where he's explaining, David Spade is on the microphone, that whole scene is hilarious where he,
Yeah, it is.
I
But
thought-
again, to me, it just feels like these are skits to make Chris Farley do something funny, and it had,
right. That's pretty much what
It was a
what
weak
it
plot,
is.
yeah.
But one of the
Yeah.
best comedies, though, it fits in the plot. It fits as part of the movie. It's
Sure.
that I think so.
Right.
We got Rob Lowe in his villain phase here, and I compare this a lot to Wayne's World and Billy Madison. They're all funny movies that I look back on with good memories. But none of them are great all-time classic I mean, Billy Madison, some people really like, and I do actually. I'll watch it all the time, but it's pretty
Mhm.
dumb. I mean, I'm not stupid. It's dumb. So, in Wayne's World, we rewatched with our kids, and that's one that, I still like it, but it's no classic. It's
Well,
just,
I
it's a
think it
I
series
would
of
think
skits.
Wayne's World. I haven't watched Wayne's World in a while, but I would think that would be one that holds up pretty well as
It was okay.
as being funny.
Again, I think a kid today is not going to think much of it because they don't
No.
know nothing about Wayne's World. But like you and me, I think we'd still find it very funny overall, and it's
Well,
it's
there's,
Right.
some, there's sentimental value there. It's when it hits you at a certain age. So, like, we could watch a movie that's popular now that we might not find funny because we're not in that state of mind
Yeah.
where everything's fresh and new and we haven't experienced this or, so I think you look back on where you were in your life and you hold a special place in your heart for certain people or movies or whatever. So
Right.
that's why.
and this is one of those movies that I mean I liked it when it came out, but there's some
Mhm.
people that like love this movie, and it was never one of my like all-time favorites or anything. So I
Well,
like
and
watching it here and there, but it's not like I'm dying to see it every week.
I think I put it up there a little higher just because to me it's the best movie that Farley was in. So I want to hang on to it and
Oh my God! Well, I was going to save
Yeah.
this for the end, but I wrote.
Go for it.
It's a good movie and it's really funny. And just like I said, I'm really glad that this movie exists because outside of SNL, this is
right.
basically what we have of Chris Farley. That's
Well, him and
worthy.
the bus
It's a
driver.
worthy
really
show.
It was.
It's a worthy showcase of his talent,
right.
and it's funny enough. And there's just not much else out there, unfortunately. So that's why I like this movie, and that's the sentimental value. So
They
And what
tried
I
to
like
redo
is-
it with Black Sheep, and
That's not good.
it was a total flop because
I've never seen that, but I don't need to because
I've
even they
not-
think it sucks, right? I mean,
Right. It was what David Spade wrote in his biography. And the thing was that they got a different director than they had wanted. And it was just not going to work because they had one director originally, and I should have wrote these names down. But and I think it was actually the same director as Tommy Boy at first. And then the studio decided to replace that person with some other. It was a woman actually that was the actual director of the movie, and it just didn't click. And David Spade says it just wasn't ever going to be a good movie.
So, I went through all the things I didn't like. I don't know if you guys have anything more, but otherwise, let's talk about what we did like, unless you have some other topic to get into.
You did bring up, my favorite, the part that I actually did laugh the hardest is, and I remember this from when I watched it originally, was when he's messing around with the car door and then Spade comes out and then the car door just falls off.
Yeah.
Farley goes, "What'd you do?"
I wrote down 4 lines, and that's one of them. That's one of my 4 favorite lines. What'd you do? And he's just sitting there waiting.
Excuse me. And then there's the other scene where he's in the hotel and David Spade comes to the door as the maid. And that whole scene was hilarious. Housekeeping. Would you like to jerk you off? What?
Yeah.
You mentioned too. I talked about the talent of Chris Farley. I don't know if you guys noticed it. Even in the simplest things, though, he is so athletic for being this fat guy that all they do is make fun of him for being fat.
Right.
Even in the beginning of the movie, when he's simply running through the campus, that guy is smooth.
And he's like doing somersaults and stuff too.
The cartwheels, and then everybody knows the Chippendale skit and the dancing. That guy was in control of his body in a way that you'd never guess, and it's really impressive. And that's actually what I think I like the most about him. I mean, that ability, that physical ability, and the fact that he can make fun of how fat he is, but at the same time do these awesome things and not just be he did so much with his body. It's pretty awesome. So
you're right. Yeah.
Quick little fun fact. So in the movie, he has, his jacket that he wears at college and the rugby shirt that he has on. He actually played rugby at Marquette when he was there. That's where he went to college. So that leads back into the athleticism of Chris Farley.
Well, so he went to college at Marquette in real life?
Yes, in real life.
That's where he went in the movie too, right?
Yeah. And in real life, he was on the rugby team. That's why he's got a rugby jacket and the rugby shirt on when he's partying at the beginning of the movie.
Well, yeah, I mean, I can totally see him playing lots of different sports. That guy he's awesome. You mentioned too how they're just a good team. I wrote down that David Spade didn't go on to do anything big or be a huge star, but they were a great odd couple, and they could have done a lot of cool things together. Unfortunately, they really were a good team, and they went well off each other. The opposites was pretty awesome. So
one story about this movie that I did read in a David Spade biography was that there was a time when they were in Canada and they had been filming all day, and then at the end of the day, they were going to go out for a beer. It was Rob Lowe, Chris Farley, and David Spade, but then Farley says that he was just too tired and he wanted to hang back at the hotel. So they're like, all right. So Rob Lowe and David Spade, they go out and have a beer and have a good time and whatever, and then they come back. And then the next day, Chris Farley finds out about it, and he's totally pissed, like legitimately pissed, that Spade went out with Rob Lowe, and it was like an angry husband. And Farley was borderline abusive to Spade, and he even at one point pushed him down a small flight of steps, pushed him over, and they got in a big, huge argument over it. And Spade cannot even explain it, why that was that big of a deal. But he was actually that possessive of Spade.
Well, he clearly had a lot of demons, and that's just one of those things.
Yeah.
So little fact here about Rob Lowe, he's actually uncredited in this movie.
Oh yeah, he is.
And that's because he was contractually obligated to Stephen King's The Stand in 1994. So he did the movie as a favor to Farley, and therefore didn't have a credit in the movie.
I think I've read that before. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you bet.
I did. I did come across that one as one I had in my notes. Well, a couple of things that I found interesting. Getting back to the movie itself, the girl that falls in love with Chris Farley in the movie. It's
Julie
interesting
Warner.
that she just
She was
falls
in
in love
Doc
with him
Hollywood.
right away. It's like there wasn't really much of a storyline there. It's just like she immediately liked him, and it wasn't
that's
like
again,
any
yeah,
sort
there's
of
not a lot of plot here.
it wasn't
Right,
any
but
sort of
they-
like a cat and mouse between the two. They did get into a little bit of a rift because when he thought that she was the one that screwed up the orders on a computer system, but in fact it was hacked by Rob Lowe, and so
Right.
that's why he was changing everything. But it wasn't even. They could have made that into a bigger deal, but they really didn't. It's like he was pissed for a little bit, and then he like kind of forgave her or whatever. But
See, I thought it was more that they knew each other from before, like growing up
Yeah.
together in the same
Yeah.
small town. Same high
that
school.
could
So
be too.
I think there might have been something, maybe she had a crush on him from high school or something, or vice versa. And
I
That's
Even
the way I
still, in a
there's not
movie
lot
like
of
that,
character development in this movie. That's just
yeah, there doesn't really
Right.
need to be, but that was
well,
my
even still, Gifford, if you're right, in a movie like that, they still build up some sort of a conflict between the two.
Well, they did,
but
like
there
you
was
just said.
They did.
but it
There.
wasn't very much there. That's what I was
No,
saying.
but I
It
think
was
that
pretty
actually
weak.
fits because I think Tommy's the kind of guy who he's just very forgiving and lovey, and
Right.
I think that fits. So for me, that was actually no problem.
Let's see. I had a couple more fun facts. Was that if you look at the list of when he's checking out his grades and finds out he got a D+ and barely makes it through college, if you look at the list, there is a number of names that are like funny names that they put in there, and the one person that got an F was Helen Keller.
Oh, I missed that.
Well,
I've
yeah,
not
it's
noticed
not. You're
that.
never going to notice it unless you know it's there. And I didn't see it or even think to look at it, and then I came across it. But that was interesting. So the movie Shrek was actually based off of this movie, and in fact, they like the characters of Donkey and Shrek. They kind of came up with the ideas. It was inspired by Tommy Boy, and in fact, they had originally cast Chris Farley as Shrek.
They had
But
done
then-
most of the movie with him already recording it. With
Yeah,
I
Chris
didn't
Farley.
know that.
and that's when he died. So then they redid it with Mike Myers.
And then they redid it all again because when they got done, Mike Myers didn't like it and wanted to go back and do the Scottish accent. So that movie went through.
Oh,
Oh,
Yeah.
no.
I did not even know that.
Huh.
So
I didn't know that it had any connection from the Shrek to this movie. I just knew that Chris Farley was the original Shrek, and it was written basically for him.
just one more fun fact, I guess. Farley's brothers appear as extras in the movie. They're at the wedding reception. at the
Oh,
beginning-
yeah, I think
at
I-
the beginning.
Yeah,
I would like to go back and see. I don't know if they're like obvious.
One of them was sitting
or if
right
they're just like
next to
sitting
him.
there.
He was sitting right next to him when Big Tom pulls Tommy up on stage to do their duet right before Big Tom keels over. Tommy's sitting at a table and one of his brothers is sitting like right next to him at the table. So
Okay.
that was one time I saw one of them anyway, but yeah.
I didn't notice it, but did you know? Did they look alike,
Oh, yeah.
or was there a lot of
Yeah.
resemblance? Okay, you could tell that they were brothers. All right.
Yep. Well, and I've seen him in other stuff, like he's been on,
Yeah, there was a
TV
show.
show.
Was there a documentary or there was a show with him? Somehow I've seen something with one of his brothers before. I don't remember what exactly I'm remembering, but
Yeah, I've just seen him on a couple other things, and the one looks so much like him that it's like, well, obviously Harley's brother.
a couple more things I liked about the movie. I think maybe my favorite scene is when the deer wakes up in the car and
Oh,
they
yeah.
scream, and then the deer screams, and then the whole thing of it just busting out of the car. I think that just makes me laugh out loud. That is hilarious when the deer is just ripping.
It's like, come on, why would you even load up the deer in the car?
Right.
In the first
Well,
place?
yeah, that's the dumb part, but it led to one of my favorite parts.
Well, and to me, that leads you back to Planes, Trains, and Automobiles when the car is, after they get crunched by the two semis, and then it's on fire, and then so that's kind of the end the kill shot for the car.
And then they get pulled
too.
over. That's another similarity. They both get pulled over by the police. But then another thing is that as dumb as Farley is, or Tommy Boy is in this movie, he's always coming up with a good plan, just right in his head, and it always works. Like to get out of the situation, and that's a good example where he
charisma. People love him.
Where he with the bees, he makes up that there's bees everywhere, and that's how they got out of the.
That's pretty dumb.
That's useless against them.
Yes, that was funny.
I have some lines that I liked. One of the ones I liked though isn't really that funny, but I found it well done and touching at the end when David Spade is talking to him and he tells him that he got a friend out of this. Like David Spade, his character got a friend because he's always so alone, and I thought that ending was really nice, and they really it was a good way to wrap those two up.
Yeah, I thought so too. That was a good way to wrap it up.
You mentioned the "What'd you do" line. I love the brothers got a hug. That's a good one to say all the time.
I use that all the time.
The other one,
Paul said that to me just the other day when we saw him. That was the first thing he said when he walks in.
The other one that gets all the time said is, "Rob, you were there." Or
yes,
you were there.
That's a classic.
And then the one I had forgotten, the old lady at the town meeting or whatever, and she says, "That's when the whores come in." And it's just the whole thing with that old lady. That's pretty funny too. And then when you learn about why she said that, and it's
right,
that's pretty funny.
I went to a prostitute one time.
That's when the whores come in. Because it's so out of nowhere, but pretty funny.
Well, one of the lines that I wrote down was when David Spade picks up Tommy, and he says, "A lot of people go to college for 7 years." In my mind, that's a nod to Animal House and Bluto, when Bluto says 7 years of college down the drain. So I connected those two. I don't know if that is any connection there, but
it's funny when he says, "Yeah, they're doctors."
They're doctors. They're called doctors. Another one I had is when they're driving back from the airport, and David Spade goes, "You hang on to a car, this Cherry, kind of like your suitcase." His suitcase is just that garbage bag taped up. I mean, he's so snide. He's such a little smart ass, and he's always digging at him. And, that one was good. And then when he comes into his office and he's doing the Darth Vader voice, and he says to him, "I know you'd like to just sit there and keep not being slim," rather than the fat. He throws the slim in there. So that was. Oh, and then another nod. He was when he asked the woman, "Do you remember your brother Dwayne?" It's kind of like his show from SNL. Chris Farley showed, "Hey, do you remember that time you did, whatever?" Just
I didn't notice that either. But
yeah,
I love the Chris Farley show.
Yeah, well, and the look she gives him when he says that line, "Hey, do you remember your brother Dwayne?" And she just looks at him like, "Well, yeah."
That was awesome.
All
right.
What else did I have down here? Another one we always use is, "He seemed like a nice guy." We always use that one throughout, regular conversations. But yeah, that's pretty much what I got. Oh, wait, the stuff with when he catches him playing with himself and all the references to masturbation. Like, does she go out? You think she goes out with one of the Yankees? And who's your favorite little rascal? Is it Alfalfa?
He throws that other one in there when he wakes up in the middle of the night.
He goes, "Or is it Spanky?" Sinner. Anyway, right. Those are the ones I had written down.
Brad, anything more to add about the movie?
No, I've hit all my notes here. Like you said, I didn't want to come off like I didn't like it at the beginning, because I did like the movie. I do enjoy the movie. What I wrote down as I watched this, like my final thoughts, I've watched a lot of these movies over in the last few years with my younger kids and stuff. I would put this in a tier of like Billy Madison, Happy Gilmore,
Yep.
Ace Ventura, Wayne's World. I loved all those movies at the time, and I still will laugh at them. But when I watch them now, they're not as good as maybe I thought they were. The ones that are the classics to me would be like Dumb and Dumber, Austin Powers, Office Space. These are movies that there's something about Mary is one. I don't think it's enough credit. Those are movies from that time period that are mint.
Right.
That might be a good segue into our next little conversation that we're going to have here.
Well, it's funny because I had done all that, and then you brought this up, and I'm like, that fits exactly in with what I was trying to say here.
There you go. So what I said, I think I explained this at the beginning of the show, but what I've asked everybody to do is to kind of pull together their list of top 5 laugh out loud movies, not necessarily best comedies, but movies that made you laugh out loud. So do you want me to go ahead with mine?
Sure.
You go ahead, because it was your choice.
All right.
Show us what you're thinking.
I will. Number 1 movie that I have on the list, and a lot of these movies I haven't seen in a long time, so maybe they'll fall flat if I watch them again. But from what I remember, the number 1 movie, in my opinion, was always Naked Gun. So, what, you don't agree with it?
No, I was just thinking nice.
You'll hear mine. I've watched all these ones that I've written down.
You said, huh? The way that you said it was like.
I meant to say, like.
All right.
I figured you were going to have that, so I'm not surprised.
Sticking with Leslie Nielsen, my number 2 I had as Airplane. Number 3, one of my dad's all-time favorite movie, and one of mine too, Blazing Saddles. Number 4, like it's hard to rank these because they're all great.
Yeah.
3 Amigos. I probably should have had 3 Amigos as number 1 because that's my number 1 all-time favorite movie that I can watch over and over again, nonstop. It has all the elements where it makes you laugh out loud.
1986, because
yes,
that's going to be a super-sized episode.
Well, I mean, that is one that has all the elements. It's a great overall comedy, and it makes you laugh.
And it has 3 hilarious guys at the top of their game who work wonderfully together. It's
an all-star team, right?
That
yeah, it's
work,
perfect.
Yep, we'll save that for another day.
Then I had Dumb and Dumber.
Yep,
and I had some honorable mentions here too. The honorable mentions I had were The Jerk, Caddyshack, Borat, Austin Powers, and Napoleon Dynamite.
Oh. Yeah,
I like it.
I did like. I had written down. I used to love, and I know that these would not hold up as well, but especially the first 1, maybe 2 Police Academy movies. As they go on, they get worse and worse. But I used to love the Police Academy movies. So
the one just bouncing off. You said Blazing Saddles, which I haven't seen forever, and I don't know. I don't know it that well. I've only seen it a couple times.
That might not. That's not going to hold up really well now.
Well, I was going to say. I was using that as the one that I watched that is not as funny as I remembered is Spaceballs. So I was
recently watched that one.
It's still funny. I mean, it's I like it. It's worth watching again once here and there. But as I'm watching it, it's like some of these jokes are not
a little over the top. Yeah.
Quite so anyway.
Well, just on that note, though, if we're talking Mel Brooks movies, you should throw Young Frankenstein into the conversation, which is another really good one, and another one of my dad's favorites.
That's my wife's favorite. She loves Young Frankenstein.
Really?
Yeah.
All right. Well, Gifford, why don't we go to you?
Yeah, I'll go before Brad's 25.
It's not that bad. It's about the same as Pete's.
So first, my number 5 was Schindler's List.
Oh, that's so funny.
No, I got my number 5 was Caddyshack. Rodney Dangerfield's scene in the clubhouse beforehand, before he goes out the first time is just great, and the scene with Chevy Chase and Carl Spangler and
Bill Murray, yeah.
You guys didn't even mention the funniest part of the whole movie, which is Ted Knight.
Right.
Oh yeah.
Every line Ted Knight says is without him, that movie is still funny, but he provides the perfect touch in every scene that he's in.
My number 4 was Three Amigos. Number 3, Something About Mary. How'd you get the Frank about the beans about the Frank? I mean, that's
that's a good one.
Just so great. We got a bleeder. Number 2 for me is Christmas Vacation. And number 1, I will go to my grave saying that Minute for Minute, Dumb and Dumber is the funniest movie ever made. I will die on that hill. That's my number 1.
Okay. So when I was doing this list, the way you described it, the ones that stood out to me the most were like movies that do like spoofs. Those are the ones where maybe they don't have a lot of plot, but they spoof things, or they do it in a way where it, like you just said, minute for minute, it's just joke, joke, joke.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So some of my honorable mentions are ones that are really, really funny movies, but I consider them better movies, actually. So they didn't quite make it. Like Vacation and Christmas Vacation, I have honorable mention. Because even though they're a little more of a complete movie than, there's some...
Right.
It's like there's a heart in there at a point. If there's a scene where there's like hugging and stuff like that, then it kind of came out on my list.
Okay.
Boo.
So anyway.
We don't like hugging on Pop Culture Yearbook.
No.
So that's why, even though I love them, they didn't make it. Anyway, so the top 4 of mine are all I consider like spoof movies. Number 1, I just combined Airplane and The Naked Gun. So that's why I said,
Sure.
Because we have the same. I can't separate the two. I always liked Naked Gun a little bit more because I was a little young when Airplane came out, so I discovered it later. Actually, I saw it pretty young, but The Naked Gun, I mean, what was I, 12? Saw it in the movie theater. Funniest movie of all time.
Well, we know know about your obsession with OJ, which we'll be talking about, I'm assuming, in a little bit here.
Oh, yeah, that is coming up.
Yep.
Number 2, this is the movie that I will go to my grave saying is the most underappreciated comedy that I have ever seen, and that is Walk Hard, the Dewey Cox story.
Yes.
That is nonstop the funniest thing that I have seen in years. And for a movie that came out in the last 15 years here, it is the one that is the new classic to me. That movie is, and it's not just the funny, it's the music is great. Like it does so well spoofing those kind of biopics, but the music is fantastic, which it actually does add to the comedy because like the song, the duet, Let's Duet. That song is hilarious, but it's also like you can sing along. It's like a good song.
It's good, yeah.
Number 3, I had Austin Powers, which spoofs like the James Bond type movies. And I remember the first time I saw Austin Powers, oh my God. And I'd still, that character he created is I can't stop laughing thinking about him. He's great. I don't love the second and the third one as much by any means, although I do think Goldmember is pretty funny. But the first one on its own is still a classic.
Very good.
Gifford, you will appreciate my number 4. This is my last spoof movie. Not Another Teen Movie.
Yes, I love
that. Is a movie that I think of all the spoof movies and how much I love teen movies. That one nails it so hard all the way through with a great cast, and just the jokes are great. There's very few that don't hit. Another underappreciated classic, and I think we're going to be talking about that one here in a month or 2.
We will be talking about that one, yes.
And then number 5, these aren't spoofs, but I put these down because these are the 2 movies that I think are the funniest comedies for me, and that's Three Amigos and Caddyshack.
Okay.
Before you get into your honorable mention, Brad, I'm just going to say that there is a movie I wish I had written down, and I'm curious if you have. I'm not going to say what it is until after you've read your list, but I'm just curious if you have this particular movie that I'm thinking of on your list.
I don't think I do because.
Hold on, let me try. 3. Nope. 7.
Nope.
Anyway, so my honorable mention. So these are all movies that, again, I think these weren't spoofs. But so Dumb and Dumber didn't make my list, and that's probably going to make you mad, Giff. But yeah, I agree. Nope. It's one of the funniest movies of all time.
I loved your list. It's a great
list.
I
went with spoof movies. I had a theme there.
So. I got you.
Something About Mary. I love that you put that on your list because that is another one. I said Office Space earlier. That's another one. You mentioned The Jerk Pete. That's another one. And then I said Vacation and Christmas Vacation. So those are my honorable mentions. I considered those a little bit more of like traditional comedies. They're not really spoofs. That's why they didn't make the top 5.
What do you got
The
there,
movie
Pete?
that I thought that you were going to say, that you might say, was Clue.
Oh,
Clue the movie is hilarious. If
it
you
is.
haven't
And
seen
actually,
it
I
in a
just
while,
watched it,
go back and watch it. And in fact,
It is.
we saw a live action production of it when we were in Massachusetts just a couple of weeks ago, and it was really well done. But the movie is phenomenal. It's a great cast, and it's line for line. It's almost like Back to the Future, where you say every line means something, and they don't waste any time in the movie. It's the opposite of what you said about Tommy Boy, where there's a lot of time wasted. But every scene is used very efficiently and just perfectly, and is hilarious. And it's got a perfect cast.
That cast was
and it's just
good.
phenomenal.
That was
it's underrated. That's an underrated, underappreciated movie, in my opinion.
It is actually, I think it's kind of a cult. There's a lot of people that love that movie. I've seen like in social media things here and there. It is a pretty highly thought of, I think, probably more than you might think.
Yep.
But I had fun making that list because, like you said, so like if I was going to say my favorite comedy of all time, one of them is L.A. Story because it's Steve Martin. But it's more of a romantic comedy, but it's got a ton of just hilarious bits as well. But that's not going to make this list because I laugh out loud for about half of it, but the other half is just I love everything about it.
It's part of a larger story, like you said.
Right.
So
making this list and thinking about that and realizing what really makes me laugh, it was fun to do. And go watch Walk Hard.
Yes. That's one we have to do an episode on.
Oh, it'll be it's 2007. It's going to be there someday.
All right,
TV.
So, what my suggestion to the other hosts was that because TV as a category is one that kind of spans multiple years, and we've already done 1994, and now we're in 1995. It's like, well, a lot of the answers are going to be the same in theory, right? So, do we do a top 5 list or not? So I said, let's do just a general TV discussion, to which these assholes responded with a salute. But just kind of opening it up, bring it whatever. If you want to bring a top 5 list, or if it's the same as what we've talked about before,
I kind of combined a top 5 list with other things.
I got a few facts and top 5 list and things like that.
I'll just say in 1995, this was really the sweet spot because it was the overlap. It was part of the overlap between Friends and Seinfeld. There's about maybe 3 years when those two shows overlap, maybe.
Well, 4. Yeah, Seinfeld went to 98. So
98. Yep.
Yeah. So I guess that's right.
4 years.
But that's when Thursday night TV was. It was must-see TV, and that was. Even though I was in college, and even though Thursday night was a party night, I always made it a point to either watch it or tape it, and watch it. Although I didn't watch a ton of TV in 1995 because you're in college, you're doing other things, and so it wasn't as high priority. TV this year.
Of that.
Yeah.
Sorry, you can finish.
I was just saying that TV on its own probably was the lowest priority in this year as it was any other year, because I watched TV all the time in high school and everything, but not as much in this particular year. But what I did watch a lot of was late night TV and Letterman. So that's one that I think could do an episode on, is like late night TV, because I just love David Letterman. I love Johnny Carson. Before that, I not as much of a fan of Jay Leno, but Letterman was as good as it gets. So I don't know. I didn't have a ton else to add on that, but we'll just kind of throw it back over to Gifford.
Well, I just wrote down a few things that happened in 95 on TV.
Yes.
I'm going to leave my first 2 notes that I wrote down for Brad, because I'm assuming he'll get into some OJ stuff. But on
Not
February,
much, just so I'll mention it.
On February 2nd, Seinfeld had its 100th episode.
Yes.
September 30th, SNL added Will Ferrell, Sherry O'Terry, and Daryl Hammond to their
It's
cast.
like you're reading off my list that I have. I think we looked at the same thing.
Well, let's see if you wrote this one down. So on November 20th, the first two internet broadcasts in TV history happened. One was a show called Rocks, which was just a public access show that had like 3 seasons from 92 to 95. And another was Computer Chronicles. It was a PBS show about issues with the rise of personal computers. But considering now that's where people watch television, that's where people watch everything, is via streaming service on their phones. This is kind of interesting that it dates back to November.
I did not have that down. So,
a couple premieres that happened this year of note for me: News Radio singled out Road Rules and Pinky and the Brain premiered this year, and ending this year was Full House and Northern Exposure.
This is the same list I have.
Also,
don't forget Blossom. Also, the end of Blossom.
Oh, she looks like Blossom.
That wasn't big for me. And then also the last one, Seinfeld went into syndication this year.
Oh, that's a big one.
Oh,
Yeah.
Really?
So that's a few that I wrote down. I'll just throw in my top 5 while I got the mic. My number 1 was Friends, 2 Seinfeld, 3 Simpsons. 4 didn't come out this year, but me and a friend of mine, McCain, we would race home from class and go to Taco Bell and then go to our own houses, which were only like a block away, sit down, eat lunch, and watch Wonder Years in syndication at noon. So that was a daily thing during the week. My number 5 was News Radio, and I threw a 6th in was Pinky and the Brain because that was a fun show to watch that I had a lot of good times with.
So you mentioned Seinfeld's 100th, News Radio singled out Blossom, Full House, and Northern Exposure, right? You already said all those?
Yep, I did.
And the new SNL cast, which I wrote down because SNL is still not very funny at this time, but those are the people that eventually, within a year or two, took it out of the
abyss. Figure it out. Yeah.
So my top 5. So Gifford already said my side pieces. My top 5 is 1 and 2 are Seinfeld and Friends, of course. I mean, and as you said though, Pete, what I was going to say a while ago, I went through this list and I'm like, I can't find 5 shows. And I watch more TV than anybody, but I couldn't find 5 shows that I knew I watched. Those are the only 2 that I like. I mean, I watched a bunch of other crap, but those are the 2 that I really liked.
Yeah.
So number 3, Gifford, without further ado, this is the OJ trial, and I watched it all summer, and it was amazing. God, that OJ. But that was must-see TV. Every summer afternoon, man, you could just sit there on a hot day, go do something, and then come in and relax and watch OJ. And just
it wasn't just summer. It started January 24th. The trial
That's when it started?
It started, and then the verdict was October 3rd.
Yeah, well, and I remember the verdict.
Yeah, that's
because
ridiculous.
I was in my literature class in college that when it came out, and we all stopped and listened to it on the radio. And I mean, I can, that's the thing. It was huge. It was life-changing.
I remember where I was when I heard the verdict. Like, how ridiculous is
that? Here's what's funny about that is that if you listen to K-Fan, Kato Kalin is on Barrero regularly. He was just on a week ago.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They're like friends. No.
Yep, because he's a Wisconsin guy, or originally from Wisconsin, which kind of surprised me when I first heard that. I just thought he was a California guy, but yeah, I mean, interesting. Anyway,
that was 3. My number 4, I combined. I've said Monday Night Football before, but I added Gopher basketball because during this time I could not really watch them in my dorm. But I would go on weeknights whenever there was a Gopher basketball game. I would go to my brother-in-law's house and watch the game with him and his roommate Bob. And eventually, my sister was living there later on with him. And I would go to their house. But I would never miss a game unless I just absolutely couldn't. I guess if I was working or something. But I would make a trip to go to their house where they were living and watch that. So that was a big thing for TV. And then my number 5. Is not TV at all, but it was on the TV in my dorm, and it's all we did. Super Mario Kart and Mortal Kombat. So that's what I wrote down for number 5. Because if we were watching TV, it was usually playing one of those 2 games on the Super Nintendo or the Sega. So I thought that fit into my TV list because I didn't watch anything else was good.
That fits into general TV discussion, Brad.
General TV discussion.
All right. Anything else? Have anything to add?
No.
All right. If not, I think.
What are we going to do next week?
What are we doing next week? Is it next week we're doing Clueless?
It's Gifford's choice.
Yes, it
Gifford's
is. Choice.
Woo! That's going to be fun. I haven't seen that movie in a really long time. That might be one that I could watch. Is it one I could watch with my daughter?
Oh yeah.
I thought so. I just couldn't remember.
Isla loves it. We watched it not long ago, and then when I had to watch it again for this, she was like, "Yeah, I'll watch that again." Couldn't wait.
All right. Sounds good. I look forward to it. And you should look forward to that episode as well. So be sure to give us a like on Facebook and Twitter and follow us and give us reviews, all of that sort of stuff. If you are interested in starting your own podcast because we have inspired you, you can click on the link that's on our show page and get started on Buzzsprout. Well, without further ado, we'll turn it over to Preacher Row. Thanks for listening, everybody. Bye.
Bye.
See you guys.
No one's here to comfort me. Sorry for what I have done. Sorry that your son is gone. 7 steps and it will be my last. And start to me on my path. I turn and I look to you. I'm scared but there's nothing I can do.